Welcome to the Hey Docs podcast with your host, Jill Allen. Today, I am welcoming back Brittany Frazier, CPA at Cain and Associates. Brittany works closely with healthcare professionals on long-term wealth planning, investment strategy, and financial decision-making across generations. We're in the middle of what's being called the largest wealth transfer in history, and it's not just about assets moving from one generation to the next. It's about who is inheriting that wealth and how their values and decision-making styles are reshaping the financial landscape. In this episode, we're breaking down what the great wealth transfer really means and what docs and their families should be thinking about right now. So let's dive in. This episode was brought to you by ADEC. Are you thinking about opening an orthodontic practice? I know, it's a big decision, but saving 25% on the ADEC equipment you need to get started, that's an easy one. Because ADEC has a special program called Smart Start, designed to help you launch your first practice. You get up to 25% off your ADEC orthodontic equipment and furniture. You also get complimentary services to help you run and grow your business. And my favorite part, access to the Smart Start pricing for 2 whole years after you open your doors. That gives you flexibility to add more chairs as your cash flow grows. It's pretty smart. As an orthodontist, you care about getting all the little details right, and ADEC really got it right with this program. So if starting off with a big savings on ADEC equipment sounds good to you, the ADEC Smart Start is definitely worth a closer look. Just follow the link in the show notes to learn more. Brittany, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hi, Jill. I'm so excited to be back.
So in the event that somebody didn't catch our earlier podcast, would you mind just letting everybody know who you are, what's your role at Cain, and what you are doing in our industry right now?
Absolutely. I'm a CPA and financial planner at Cain and Associates. If you're not familiar with Cain, we work primarily with dentists and other small business owners, helping them meet their financial goals. So we're a CPA firm and we do wealth management, but anything from looking at their practices and businesses all the way to tax planning, investments, and retirement planning, really all designed to meet the clients where they're at and also help them get to their goals.
I love it. And I know you and I have worked together, and I love what Cain does just in as a whole for our industry and everybody out there. And you have such a good approach to it. Everybody on the team does. And I think it's so nice to know that there are experts out there in a field that not a lot of us feel real comfortable in, when especially a lot of my docs that are listening, you're just getting in, you're getting started, and you're like, wealth management. Ugh. I hope to have to deal with that problem, but that isn't something I'm thinking about right now necessarily. And so it's good to know that we've got good experts out there that are going to be able to help us as we move along in the stages of our life and our career.
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting is you said something that kind of resonated with me. You said, maybe that doesn't apply to me, or that's not really where I'm at right now. But a couple of the things that I've been working on, and I meant to say this earlier, but I do see a full team of clients. So I see clients ranging from practice owners to retired clients and pretty every stage in between. I do some speaking for the firm as well, and I'm on the board of our charitable foundation, one of which primarily teaches financial education through our community. It started by teaching our clients' dental practice team members and their kids, and it's just evolved. And so we've extended our outreach into schools and elementary education, high schools, all sorts of things like that, which has been great. But a couple of the areas that I have honed in on, or my initiatives through Cain are women in wealth. And I'll elaborate on that in a little bit. I know we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then also next generation. So how do we teach our kids about money and my generation and below because of what's upcoming? So it's funny. I joke that I focus on 3 of the areas that we're never supposed to talk about, right? Money, gender, and
Yep.
family dynamics, right? So what you're never supposed to talk about at the dinner table, we're talking about today. Buckle up, Jill.
Yeah, I am excited. The one area that I want to jump into, and I thought this will be a great topic, is I know a lot of us are reading headlines and we're seeing all these hooks about the great wealth transfer. And I think as I'm looking at that where I'm at, and I've got parents that are still alive, fortunately, but are getting to that stage in life where things are going to be happening and changing and transitioning. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about that today, and let's get into that and what that's going to mean for us and what maybe is different in generations of the past to what we're dealing with and even generations younger than us.
Yeah, absolutely. So you called it the great wealth transfer, which is a fancy name for what's happening. It's already happening, and it's going to get bigger and faster. So over the next 20 years, between 70 and 90 trillion dollars is going to change hands. And it's really going to two groups of people, which happen to be those two kind of initiatives I was talking about. But by the way, this wealth transfer is the largest wealth transfer in history. And like I said, I know it's unbelievable. So it's going to two demographics, the first of which is women. Women are going to control 2/3 of the wealth in the United States by 2030. Which, by the way, is in 4 years, which is unbelievable. When I first started doing this, that was a few years ago, and it was like 6 years. And now I'm like, that's literally in 4 years, which is crazy. And the reason women live longer than men, right? An average of about 6 years. Okay. So that's the first reason. And then we're also inheriting it from our parents as well. But 90% of women will be the primary financial decision maker at some point in their lives. Okay. Wow. Which is definitely different than our parents, their parents, and their parents, for sure. But for women, on the topic of women, they're not just inheriting wealth, but more than ever, they're creating wealth. Okay. So I know these people seem crazy big, but I use the examples of Sarah Blakely. Do you know who she is? So she's the founder of Spanx, right? She literally started by cutting off the bottoms of her pantyhose and saying, "Hey, this could actually serve as to help control
suck
my
me in where I need to."
And literally sold her business for an inordinate amount of money. Serena Williams, she's one of the most successful tennis players in history. She's won the most prize money in the United States, which is amazing, of women, men, any tennis player. And Taylor Swift, right? We can say what we want about her, but she's unbelievable, and she's completely self-created, right? She got her big break, but she took it to where she is today. Yeah. The business world is also changing. So even just compared to 5 years ago, in 2020, women held about 27% of S&P 500 board seats, and now they're at about 36%. So that's really big progress in a short period of time. So women is the first demographic which will control the wealth. And then the next shift in wealth is going to be to the next generation. So what we have is the baby boomers and the silent generation, the parents of those, are passing along wealth to Gen X and millennials, and Gen Z a little bit as well. So what we're finding and what we're realizing is that those demographics, so me, I can consider myself a millennial, and then Gen Z, we grew up with access to information very differently, okay? We tend to be very aware of finances, and part of that's due to the world around us being just more complex than it was for the older generations. We tend to want to understand our money decisions and investments and strategies a little bit better. And we also want some transparency as well. So those are the big things where the wealth is moving to. So I'm saying, hey, these are two groups of people that look at money maybe differently than who has held the wealth in the past. So those are the first thing we have to do is understand what they're thinking, what do they value, and speak to those things. Okay. Yeah. And then as advisors, eventually we have to plan for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I fall into the Gen X. So, I'm right there with you where it goes down. And I am really curious to how, not only just with seeing women stepping into these financial leadership roles, and I think that's just yay for us. Yeah. But also, joking aside, really thinking about that and what that means and what that's going to look like. Just even in general, people are living so much longer than they have in the past, and thinking about just how much more of a safe, gosh, it's hard to believe that it wasn't that long ago where women couldn't even have checking accounts without a husband signer. Like, how nutso is that to think about that? And that was in my life, within my lifespan. So I'm curious if you can talk to us a little bit about, in seeing that shift, how is that going to, or is it even now, changing what investment strategies are going to look like? And the planning conversations. I can remember when I was younger, and just even the difference in a generation of, it was kind of like, yeah, you probably need to invest, but it's not, worry about that later. And I think the things that I read now, very much younger generations are very in tune with that, which was just, I think that's a generational shift there. But even the planning conversations, and what does that mean when you are potentially going to inherit this wealth, and what do you do with that, and long-term legacy decisions, all those things that, I don't know, a lot of us may not be thinking about when we're younger. It's going to fall on us fairly quickly here. And we're going to have a strategy for what to do when we have that come our way.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I want to take a step back, and you said sometimes this doesn't seem like it might apply to us, or we need to understand that we might need to start sooner. Sometimes I hear, I can't afford to do that. And so when I use the example sometimes of small shifts, right, can really make big differences. And the earlier we get started, just think about like how we compound. How does money grow, right? How do we accumulate money? So I use a cup of coffee example. Probably all of us go drive on our way to work and we stop and get a cup of coffee, at least some days, right? But that cup of coffee being $5 at Starbucks, right? I use the Starbucks example. So $5.50 for a latte, let's say.
Yeah.
And that latte, if I were just to not do that every single day for 40 years, okay, that's $2,000 per year of Starbucks. And instead I invest that. Okay.
Yep.
That translates into $212,000. Okay. At the end of the 40-year period by just not buying the cup of coffee and instead just putting that money into an account. Okay. That's something that, whatever that is, right? That's your fast food, or maybe that's your subscription to some service that you don't even use, right? But if you did that though, and you bought that cake pop, because who goes to Starbucks and doesn't buy a snack? At least I don't.
I'm the Rice Krispie tree. I need the Rice Krispie.
My kids are the cake pop. I like they used to have a cinnamon coffee cake that was like, but anyways, I digress. So if you just doubled that, and let's say it's $11, we don't end up with double at that end of that 40-year period. It's over triple. So instead of $212,000, it's over $730,000 that you accumulated by just skipping that snack and that Starbucks. So I'm not saying that we need to be skipping Starbucks, but I'm just saying that those small little shifts can make big differences. So a lot of people think wealth is all relative, right? Doesn't mean that you're a billionaire or millionaire or anything like that, right? So wealth is personal to you. So you asked, how does this influence our investment decisions or planning conversations? I mentioned earlier, I do see a full team of clients. So I started realizing a few years ago, or maybe 5 years ago or so, the differences in the questions and the concerns that my female clients had as opposed to my male ones. And I'll just say here right now, neither one is right or wrong. It just is, right? And so just speaking about the differences is huge in and of itself. So what I started seeing was women asking deeper questions about diversification and risk management. They were starting to prioritize, I was noticing that they prioritize things like long-term security, less importance about short-term performance. As women, it turns out we don't really want to lose our money, and more of a theme of looking at a holistic approach. So looking at what are the goals we're trying to achieve, and as long as I'm on track to meet those goals, I'm good. I think we talked last year and I said, sometimes I feel like as women, we are so overwhelmed and overloaded with all of the decisions we have to make. I was even talking with my husband about it yesterday. I'm like, if you just decided what we were eating for dinner every single night for 1 week, I would just feel the mental load just completely lifted. It's just those little things sometimes. Yes. So where I was going with that is it tends to be that women just, once they make a decision on an investment strategy and they make a plan, they tend to stick to it. Because I think some of that's because we don't have a whole lot of kind of time or mental capacity to question it, right? Some of the trends that I see when I look at my female investors, and again, I've done a lot of research on this. And so I always tell people when I talk about these topics, right? I picked these risque topics, if you will. So I'm always rooted in facts, right? I'm always going to speak facts. But women actually trade 40% less than men. So they're not moving in and out of investments. So they're investing in things and they're sticking to them.
Yeah.
They tend to stay invested for a longer time. Again, having a longer term perspective is a theme that I'm seeing. Women tend to take a goals-based approach instead of a performance-driven approach. So a lot of my male clients are, and some female as well. I don't want to make generalizations but for the most part, it's my male clients that are asking me, why didn't my account do as well as S&P 500 or Bitcoin did this? Why didn't my money do that? And it's just interesting to me that those are the things that really matter to them. We have to use that in the front of our minds as we're planning. And again, it may not change a whole lot, but a lot of what this is, and a lot of what investing is behavior management. So that's one of our pillars of investing is once we have chosen our strategy, making sure that we stick to it. And if we do need to ingest, it's not based on some sort of emotion or noise around us. It's based on intentional changes that we're making, right?
Yep.
So all of that to say, all of that tends to reward women as, again, all of this is facts driven. Women can outperform men in their investment portfolios over the long term by as much as 1% annually.
Wow.
Which is amazing because I think they avoid those market timing issues, like trying to pull in and out of the market, as well as the emotional trading, because as women, we tend to get a bad rap for being emotional, but it turns out in investing, we don't really do that, which is interesting, which I find ironic.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
Because I'm the first to admit, I'm definitely an emotional type of human. But yeah, anyways, so those are some of the things that we're seeing. But one of the things that I want to call out here is we just talked about how women actually are good at it. They have good instincts. And again, they outperform over the long term. But there's a couple problems. The first of which, women are not confident in financial decisions. One of the statistics that I find very interesting is only about 48% of women feel confident in making financial decisions compared to 66% of men. Okay. So less than half of women feel confident in financial decisions, which is a big issue, right? We need to have confidence in what we're doing.
Yep.
Because I think some of the other stuff I've researched is that causes us to underinvest or to just stand on the sidelines because we don't feel like we know what we do. And then the second is that women feel disconnected from investing. One thing that stands out to me is that only 25% of women, according to one study, say that their advisor truly understands their needs, which to me as a financial advisor, I take personal offense to that. I think that's kind of crazy. And one of the other things that our director of wealth management, Caitlin, tells me often is that she gets a fair amount of widows. And she was telling me this 2 years ago, and I looked at it, and then between 70 and 80% of women changed their financial advisor, within 1 year of the death of their spouse, which is interesting to me. They do not feel connected to that person for whatever reason. As we just talked about, women influence money decisions dramatically. 85% of consumer spending decisions are made by women, which I think is amazing.
Yep.
And on the topic of women, I hope people don't listen to this and say, oh, this is women, I don't want to hear this, because really this doesn't only apply to women. This applies to their spouses, their sisters, their daughters, their mothers. So this topic really applies to all of us. So this is why women is one of the areas I've chosen to focus on, because I've seen it firsthand in the consult room.
Yep, absolutely. And yes, I think all of us could say who are in the orthodontic field, when we're thinking about our practices, we care about making that experience. We want mom who's coming in. We're marketing to usually the mothers of if we're talking about younger patients coming in, we want them to walk in and feel good. And we do know that they are the decision makers. It's very rare anymore. It may be an excuse that's used that we need to go talk to dad, but most of the time, our moms coming in know exactly what the budget is, exactly what they're willing to pay, and exactly what it's going to take to get them to yes in that consult. To your point, it doesn't surprise me, and totally agree with that.
I love that.
And now a word from the sponsors who make this podcast possible. Hey docs, if your new patient follow-up depends on someone remembering, it's leaking revenue. Grayfinch automates new patient follow-up, texts and emails go out automatically, and your treatment coordinator just checks their tasks list to see what needs a quick call or a more personalized message. That is one of the many reasons I recommend everyone take a look at Grayfinch. It isn't just a follow-up tool, it's a complete practice management software built to help you grow and scale. Stop leaking revenue and get $500 off your startup fee with the Jill Allen special at grayfinch.com/Jill Allen. Hey docs, let's talk about Smile Suite, because it's not just another scheduling system. It's a game changer in the world of new patient management. And as a proud Smile Suite partner, I've witnessed the incredible impact it has on practices of all sizes. Smile Suite means your new patient calls and web leads are expertly handled 7 days a week, even during nights and weekends. And they offer top-notch customizable presentation software and seamless post-consultation follow-up. It's like having a secret weapon for your practice's success. Curious? Dive into the revolution at getsmilesuite.com. And don't forget to mention Hey Docs to unlock some extra goodies. Elevate your practice with Smile Suite, because every smile deserves a suite of excellence. So let's talk a little bit about this next generation. And we talked about right now it's Gen X, millennial, and a little bit of the following one. But let's talk about what that's going to look like when just that inheriting of wealth and just the difference in environment. To your point, what you were saying, a lot of women are coming into this maybe it's coming in from a spouse that's passed away or whatnot. And then from there, it could be parents, maybe the parent that is passing away that's coming it down. And I'm curious if you can talk about just how technology is maybe changing the way next generations. I can think about it like from my parents, and when they were investing, they weren't going out and necessarily looking at a computer and doing all of these things. There were things there, but it's definitely changed over the years. And my parents weren't looking at Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and things like that when they were looking at investing when they were younger. So I'm curious if you can talk to just this different environment and how we are approaching it now versus maybe previous generations, and how that's maybe changing how either we now have to prepare for our heirs, or what it's looking like when we're having these conversations with our parents and saying, hey mom, hey dad, like I know you've got this all set up and I know it's going to come my way at some point, but maybe we need to have a talk about it. Doesn't just need to be a surprise when I'm having to go through this.
Yeah, today's children, and when I say children, they could be even my parents, right? But grew up very differently than their parents and their grandparents. And so you can continue to go down. I grew up very differently than my parents. They grew up very differently. But really, the world around us has changed, and technology is a big piece of that. So right now, like the constant access to information for, let's say, the millennials and below, right? Gen Z, I think, if you will. And the information it's received very differently and instantaneously. And even those that are younger than me, everything now is Instagram, TikTok, short videos. And if we don't capture their attention in 30 to 60 seconds, like we've lost them already, which is very different. So they receive information quickly and in nuggets, and they want the bottom line, and that's it, which is very different. That's very different. And also financial information and financial advice is provided that way, which is amazing to me. If we think about grandparents and parents and grandparents, like there used to be a time where before the internet where you actually went to the newspaper to pick stocks. Yeah. And that wasn't really that long ago. So things have changed and changed very fast. But for millennials and Gen Z, their first investing experience may have been just through an app. they probably didn't have, and they don't have a financial advisor. So these are the things that we are looking at and thinking of, and we need to learn how to connect with that. First of all, how to communicate with them. What mediums are we using? And then also, what is their definition of, because that can also look very different. And I think also what was happening in the background is some major world events. So even just in my life that I remember, my kind of post-college, is the 2008 financial crisis, COVID, inflation cycles, significant global unrest. All of that can really impact how we look at money and the urgency involved, and maybe being involved at an earlier age than we would have in the past. Because again, older generations didn't really talk about money. It just wasn't something that you did. So the way they look at wealth is different. They tend to look at purpose, impact, right? Those kinds of things. So you have things like ESG investing and those kinds of things. They want clear, transparent advice. So back to that, the bits of information, like bottom line, how does this directly affect me? And then a lot of times they want to understand the why, which I find very interesting, because they want it quickly, but they also want to know why.
Yeah.
So why does this matter? What it does matter, because some of my research, I've found that 70% of wealthy families lose their wealth by the second generation and 90% by the third.
Yeah.
So to me, that's just like crazy if you're trying to create some sort of legacy, right? And so why? I think it's lack of preparation. They don't know what to do with it, right? Lack of communication. Nobody wants to talk about money, right? We've already established this. And I don't really love it either. It's not natural. Like, I don't really want to talk to, it's very difficult for me to talk to my parents about that. And then the last thing is financial literacy. I think we've gotten better about this in our world, but I still think there is a giant lack of financial literacy and education in our schools, and from all the way from elementary all the way through. I have a master's degree in undergraduate, and I didn't really learn much personal finance, if anything. And this is what I did. I went to business school, right? So it comes down to those kinds of things as to why is this happening? So how do we change this, right? Again, why I decided this was something that I really want to spend time on is just introducing financial education a little bit earlier. I think we've done this really well through our firm, and Daryl, when he started the firm, which was about 42 years ago, he created a seminar through the 3-to-1 Foundation for clients' kids. And those kids, many of which are now clients of ours, but they started at that when they were 18 years old, and they went to this seminar and they learned, what is a paycheck and how do I save that paycheck and how does money grow and those kinds of things. So we've been doing this for a long time, but how do we get that out to more people? And I think that this is obviously a very good reason and some very good facts as to why we want to get this done sooner and earlier. So yeah, those are some of the things that I'm seeing, and why those are some of the areas I want to dig deeper into.
Yeah. So I want you to just say that statistic again about kind of the passing down of wealth and how quickly that is lost. Say that one more time for me.
70% of families lose their wealth by the second generation. Okay. And 90% by the third.
Wow.
Okay.
I think that's not something I've heard before. And it's shocking to me, especially when I think about the topic that we're talking about. We've got this very unique bubble where there's this massive amount of wealth that is changing hands. And if you think about it, we're that, for a lot of us, that second generation. Mm-hmm. And to think that if we are not planning this right, we fall into that 70%. And if we don't do it right with our kids or the next generation that comes after us, it's going to be gone. And that's just really shocking to me to hear that. And so I'm wondering if you can just dive in a little bit deeper about, because this is the uncomfortable areas, about what are the conversations that we need to be having. I know you were talking about that, but maybe get in there a little bit, make us uncomfortable a little bit about what is that proactive conversations that we need to be having. What do we need to be thinking about? Because I think about when somebody wins the lottery, everybody thinks, oh, it's going to be great. And I think almost every person who wins the lottery doesn't have the money by the time it's all said and done, unless they have been prepared to deal with what's going to happen when I have this big windfall. So can you expand on that a little bit?
Those people need to call Cain Waters and we'll tell them what to do with it. But on the conversations that have to happen is first just financial transparency. Money doesn't have to be this taboo topic that we talk about. I actually think the healthiest households from a financial standpoint are the ones that talk about it. It's just, you got to break down the wall and just forget about how uncomfortable it is. And then once we normalize it, it's fine. Right? So starting the conversation of what we did to earn that money, like teaching the value of $1, I think is super, super important. And this is something I'm doing with my 8-year-old, trying to do a little bit with my 5-year-old too. But I think that transparency builds the accountability, the responsibility, and also ingrains that into you from a young age that this was earned. This was, for the most part, it's earned, right? So it's having those conversations. And I will say just, it doesn't have to be, I'm telling my kids or my parents are telling me how exactly much money I'm getting and, when that will be. We don't know when, but what exactly that looks like and what accounts is it does not necessarily have to start with that. It's just having some conversations about money. The second thing is the purpose of wealth, right? Like having conversations about what are our values? What does wealth mean to me as your parent? But also, what does it mean for our family? For the most part, sometimes it's a baseline. I just want to make sure my kids are okay. They have lifestyle security, let's say, peace of mind that they're going to be taken care of, right? But sometimes, and a lot of times it's more than that. Let's say I want to pay for my grandkids' college. I want my kid to be able to, or my grandkid to be able to start a business, right? Maybe it's keeping up with your family owned business. So maybe you have an orthodontic client that really wants their kid who's in ortho residency right now to take over their practice. Having that conversation, that is purpose and that is wealth, right? It doesn't have to be financial assets or real estate or anything like that. That is wealth in and of itself. So having those conversations. And then the last piece that I see often and that matters more and more to families is what do we want to do with that? Do we want to give it away? And to whom do we want to give it away? And how much? Are there certain causes or organizations that are important to us? And having those conversations early. We may not know exactly what it looks like, but we can probably have a fairly good idea of what's important to us. And then making sure that our kids understand, if we do have an advisor, and hopefully we do, why we have that, right? It's not necessarily I can just invest all this online or using a robo-advisor myself, because to make sure that we've met all of those goals that we just talked about, the things that we want to create, that purpose-driven wealth, we need someone to help us make sure we have the right things positioned in our portfolio to achieve those things. Time horizon, risk tolerance, liquidity needs, all of those things to make sure that we get there. That may or may not look like what the TikTok finfluencer says. That's a thing. I don't know if you know about this. Finfluencers, they're calling them. So they're influencers, but they're giving personal financial advice on TikTok. Yep, finfluencers. I learned this, Judson and Hunter. They talked about it on one of their podcast episodes a couple months ago, which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, it's really, those are some of the conversations that we're having. And instead of protecting our kids from money, it's teaching them how to be good stewards of it and handling it and making it not a scary thing or not something that's, like we talked about, taboo.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you're talking about with the finfluencers or the robo investors. I think that especially what I'm hearing, and Brittany, you come at this much more from the facts aspect, and I'm just coming at it as Jill read this, is we do know that our Gen Z and even maybe some of our millennials that generation is probably the most strapped, like from a financial being set up for the future. It's a really tough generation to be in right now. And like I can see when I'm out there, just even in how hard it is for people to get houses and different things, the amount of debt that a lot of our doctors that I'm talking to are carrying coming out of school and whatnot. And so I think this is just so interesting. And the point that you made about having a real person to walk through and work this through, because it is very easy, I think, especially being a lot of these generations that are very native to getting their information from the internet, from their friend book, Facebook groups, from crowdsourcing, this, that, or the other, and realizing that may be able to take you to a point, but if you really want to have strategy and plan behind it, you still need, it's like using AI. We still need
Yeah.
a real person to bounce the ideas off us and talk to and give them your vision or what you think is your vision and let them help you through that versus just kind of picking and choosing your way through. This sounded good on this blog and this sounded good. And you may end up actually having a lot of, I would think, confusion in your strategy for what you're doing.
Yeah, I think technology can be a blessing and a curse. And it's allowed us, and AI is just, it's going to allow us, and its technology allows us to do so much and so much more efficiently. But that doesn't necessarily replace the need for somebody to walk you through this. And I'm not saying that because that's what I do for a living. I'm saying that because I'm bringing it back to something that I talked about earlier that I've been talking a lot about is purpose-driven wealth. So I break that down into a couple of steps. First, what are our values? What's important to us? Then using those, what goals do I want to accomplish? Okay. How do I map out a plan to get there? So that's the investment strategy. That's how I'm going to find the money to save. That's what vehicles I'm going to put it into, those kinds of things. Then once we set that plan, it's sticking to the plan and adjusting, not based on emotion, but based on things that change, because undoubtedly life will throw us curveballs. We are going to have those things that come up and we're going to have to adjust the course. But the key is to adjust and to get back on to get to that end game. And if we do all of that really well and control the things that we can, we will get to our goals. And it's very difficult for someone who has all of these pieces coming to them where they run a business and they have kids to take care of. And it's very difficult for someone to do all of those things and do all of that for themselves. Yep. Now, I'm sure there are people that can do that, but that's why our relationships, and you know Cain Watters very well, but relationships is the number one business we're in. We genuinely want our clients to get to where they want to go, and we want to help them get there. And we do that, and we've done it successfully. So I feel using that technology, and I love that orthodontists are notorious for this, is I saw this on this and I went to this conference and I did this. What about this blog? This Facebook group says this. And I'm like, I love that you have all this information, but it's a blessing, but it's also a curse. And I'm glad that you're asking me this, but also it's like, you're doing the right things. Keep on going. But so it's using that, and it's great to have all of that information, but really bringing it back to what are we trying to do? Yes. And are we on track to get there?
Yeah, I love it. And to what you keep saying, that purpose-driven wealth, it's kind of like coming back to the values in your practice. Does this align with what we're doing? What is your purpose for your practice? What is your purpose for the wealth strategy that you're building? And what is that going to look like? And there's lots of shiny pennies out there, shiny new objects that you can go after, but it may not align truly with those values. And when you're making your decisions to whatever you're going to do, I think it's always pulling it back there. I love that. Brittany, I know you and I could just talk and but I know we're going to have to bring this to a close. So if somebody wants to learn more about you, wants to connect with you, or just learn more about Cain Watters in general, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you or the group?
Absolutely. So a few ways. The first is our website, www.cainwatters.com/contact. So you can reach out to us that way. We also have tons of resources on our website. We have information on some of the seminars and workshops that we put on. I mentioned earlier the Accumulating Wealth podcast. Hunter and Judson do a great job with quick 20 to 25 minute episodes on really everything from your running your business to investments and all those things. So all of that information is available on our website. Anybody can reach out and find something that speaks to them.
That's great. Thank you again for being on. It's always such a pleasure. And I just feel like I know everybody's going to be coming to the end of this. And I got some good pearls out of this. So thanks, Brittany, for that.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much for having me, Jill.
Yes. So the way I like to finish us up, you aren't off the hook yet, is to do a quick little speed round. Are you ready to jump in with the speed round?
I'm ready.
All right. What is one daily habit or ritual that you think helps you stay productive and balanced?
So I probably about 6 months ago, and I was still figuring this out, and this probably looked very different a few years ago, but probably about 6 months ago, I started waking up like super early in the morning, like 5 a.m. And my husband was always a super early morning type, but not me. But 5 a.m., I wake up and the first thing I do is make a cup of coffee and literally feel like I'm going to light the world on fire that day. Like it's calm in my house. Nobody's listening. Nobody's saying anything. I'm sitting there. I'm doing my emails. I work on projects, things that I'm finishing up from the day before or starting for the next day. And I get so much done that I go into the day feeling really productive already. So it puts less pressure on the rest of the day. It's the calm before the storm. So it's my cup of coffee, 5 a.m. wake ups.
I love that. That's great. All right. How about another one? What is your go-to strategy for getting unstuck if you've got a problem you're trying to work out?
Yeah, this is one that's required a lot of personal development and kind of life experience, but talk it out. I would internalize things and just, oh, this is my issue. I need to fix it. Or I don't know how to solve this problem. Or here's something that I'm seeing in my clients or talk it out. I realized that I am surrounded by really smart people and really wise people. Talk it out would be the first thing. And if that doesn't work, maybe I pour a glass of wine and call it a day.
Yep.
And start over the next one.
There we go. Oh, I love that. All right. And the final one, what is one piece of advice that you wish you had followed earlier in your career?
So if anybody that knows me well often tells me, just take a chill pill, just chill. Sometimes you need to chill. And sometimes it takes some time for yourself, do something for yourself. Just don't worry so much about everything because I'm just very type A, very worrier. So I was actually driving into the office today and I was listening to 90s country and Shania says it really well. She says, come on over, pull up a seat, take the load off your feet. You know that song? So take the load off your feet, take the load off your mind. So I think I need to start chilling out more. And I'm really trying to do that. And I wish I had done that and realized that a lot earlier. But hey, why not now?
That's great. And that's perfect. And the throwback to Shania on top of it all, even better.
I'm Team Shania.
Me too. Again, thank you so much for being on Hey Docs with me. This was great. As always, you give us such good information. And I'm glad that you're leaning into some of the areas we don't traditionally talk about because I think it's an important place. And thanks for standing in that space.
Thanks, Jill.
Yep. All right. Till next time.
All right.